Welcome everybody, this is Philip Tracy, editor at Industrial IoT 5G. Welcome to another episode of IoT in Action. Today I'm here with Dan Ward. He is the co-founder and chief creative officer at Detroit Labs. Today's discussion is going to be really interesting. Detroit Labs, they create, design, and develop applications, so mobile apps, tablet apps, computer apps. Now they've created some apps within the IoT space, and that's really what our focus is going to be on. But before I get into that, I want to just bring up, just to show the scale of apps they've created, just a quick search on the Google Play Store, and I find an app from Detroit Labs on Flint water rescue, anything from that to a Whiskey Nation, a whiskey rating app. So Detroit Labs certainly touches a lot of different areas for their mobile applications. And yeah, Dan, thank you very much for being with me today to talk about your IoT solutions.
Thanks, Philip. And it's kind of funny you're finding the ones in the Google Play Store that are our pet projects. We work with the likes of General Motors, Kia, Volkswagen, all the way to Domino's Pizza, Jimmy John's, Kimberly-Clark. So we spend a lot of our time working for Fortune 500 companies, sometimes in the background, creating some really great technology. And then when we have an opportunity, we develop the things that we're passionate about, like whiskey and helping Flint.
Yeah, yeah. Those are two really great initiatives, I would say. So as far as IoT goes, your applications are kind of where, in many cases, where the end user finally interacts with the big, complex IoT solutions that kind of happen in the background or happen before them. That's a lot of stuff that I cover, but what you have is really where the user interacts with the data in, with a nice, clean UI. Can you talk about where Detroit Labs kind of fits within IoT and I guess the importance of having an application like that?
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's all about the user. At the end of the day, IoT is only valuable if a user is seeing value in it, if the user is willing to use it, and if the user is getting data from it that they can create some kind of action with. So what we're doing is we're looking at, okay, what IoT solution is set up? What can we get out of it? And then how do we modify that to a user experience, whether that be mobile, whether that be web, whether that be something else. We want to try to figure out how can we provide value with the data that's coming off the devices. So in our world specifically, we're in Detroit, so automotive's a big deal here. We kind of, have fallen into the automotive space, and I view that as one of those first consumer IoT devices. It's interesting because it didn't start necessarily as IoT. It started as connected auto in and of itself, and now it's starting to blend into IoT because it's connecting to other things. So we're tasked with taking all that complex stuff that happens in the background, making it real pretty and usable on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I, we met at Bosch Connected World in Chicago. We had a great discussion about the user level. So what sort of, you talked about auto, what sort of companies are coming to you asking for an IoT application, and what functionalities are they looking for?
Well, it's interesting. We're starting to get a little bit of a different ask. So we're now seeing some companies that are still in the early planning stages of having some type of connected physical product, and they want to try to figure out how a user would interface with it. They'll come to us with an idea of, we think that a user would want to do this. And then we work together to try to figure out if that idea that they have is true and valid, and what else could the user gain from this type of a connected device. We're getting much more interest from those manufacturers of the pieces of hardware. That is their skill set. They are fantastic at building hardware that can communicate with Bluetooth, with Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave, whatever you want it to be. They're fantastic at building that stuff. We just dabble in that area. Where our expertise comes in is how can we interact with that? And so we're definitely starting to more interest from those manufacturers coming to us and saying, hey, our next product line, we're looking to have this top end piece be connected, and we think it can provide this type of value to the user. We work with them to figure out if that's true and how we can create that.
Yeah. And what can you tell me about some of the solutions you've already created for IoT and more specifically in an industrial setting?
Yeah, so we do have one that is out there on the logistics side, that is all about tracking workforce. So it's a logistics management company. App is called Badger. I think the company's even called Badger. Yeah. Just double checking. But it's all about being able to know exactly where each piece of freight is at. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to enable their drivers to let the mothership know exactly where they were without making it a cumbersome process, without having to go out and get big pieces of hardware to strap onto each truck, because Badger is much more about providing visibility for smaller companies into kind of a logistics conglomerate of, this person may only own 2 trucks, but they're part of this. This person may only own 4 trucks, they're part of it. And the goal was to figure out, can we create something just using the mobile phone, using the hardware that's available, to try to facilitate that without having to do a big scale, GPS type solution. So that's gone well. It was the foundation of the company being created, which is kind of cool to build something at that early stage. They've, I believe, grown quite a bit since. And then we actually helped them transition that to an internal team, which we like to educate as much as we like to develop. So that part was fun. We do have another one that's not in industrial, but it's more on the B2B side. And we worked with Quicken Loans to develop an app that allowed people to request things of their facility teams. So at Quicken Loans, they have something called The Guy. So you call The Guy for anything. You text support, you're out of popcorn, it's too cold in an area, whatever it is, you call The Guy. And so we created an app that they can connect with The Guy quicker. And because Quicken Loans, at least in downtown Detroit, is, they're huge. They are downtown Detroit. They've got, 6 or 7 buildings where they've got people in it. You don't always know where you're at in these buildings. And so what we did was we used beacon technology for that. So each kitchen, which is a primary area where people may request things, has a beacon in there. So no longer do you have to, see something's wrong in the kitchen, go back to your desk, type up a report to The Guy and try to remember exactly what kitchen you were in, because it's actually quite difficult. So now when you open up the app, it sees a beacon and knows right where you're at. When you send a request, it's got all that information that comes with it. So it was a beacon project that started with, I think, only about 20 beacons, and I think they're up to like 400 beacons or something like that. It was a project that we built to make sure it could scale without our involvement. So their team has been able to scale and add beacons without us doing anything, which I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. What can you tell me about when you think of an IoT app, what can you tell me about the process of creating an IoT application versus creating something more consumer oriented?
Well, I think that consumer still plays a large role in IoT. And I think it shouldn't be ignored, because at the end of the day, we wake up in the morning and most folks have a pretty similar ritual. They're checking one of Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, likely. And so we have to borrow from those experiences, because if an IoT solution is truly going to work, you can create the very best possible thing, best data, best hardware, best user interface. But if your folks aren't going to use it, then it provides you zero value. It's not solving the issue that you're trying to solve. And so we look at it as very much a consumer product, because consumers are using it, right? When they leave the job, they're going and checking Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we need to make sure that they have an experience that will feel similar to that. So that's first and foremost. The next step is where, for IoT, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're presenting the data in a digestible manner. So just spitting out raw numbers is the first way to have an IoT project fail. You may have the best numbers in the history of the world, but if they don't mean anything to the user, then they're not actionable. And so what we strive to do is try to figure out what data can we pull and how can we present it in an actionable way. That way the project can be a success. At the end of the day, if your users aren't using it, you're not successful.
Great. And and lastly, just to kind of step back and give a more big picture look at things, what can you tell me about IoT as a whole? The clients that are coming to you, are you seeing more apps? Are you seeing more demand for applications? And what can you say about, I guess, kind of go over why would a company want something, a Detroit Labs created app? What benefits does it provide the company?
Yeah, I certainly think that we're seeing more. I think we were in a period where everyone was trying to figure out IT. I think a lot of people knew they could build sensors, they could build Bluetooth modules. I mean, a smart home is a really great indicator of where IoT is going, right? Like everyone knew they could build something that connects to another thing. I'll be as bold to say that may not be the hardest part. The hardest part is creating a story and creating an ecosystem and trying to communicate to people why they need this solution. So I think that we've kind of hit that tipping point a little bit where companies have attempted to do this. They've attempted to install these things. They've attempted to pull data and aggregate the data, but they've gotten to kind of a wall a little bit of figuring out, what do we do next? How do we get our folks to use this? Our folks think this is cumbersome. They don't like having to use something. They don't like changing the way that they're doing things. And I think we're hitting that tipping point, that moment where more folks are coming to us and saying, okay, listen, we did a very noble job. We have all this great data. The app is engineer designed, if you've heard that term before. So we need to sit down and kind of break it down, figure out what we're missing, figure out how we can engage with our targeted user. And that's where we come in, and we're definitely seeing a spike in interest there.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much for speaking with me today. Detroit Labs, IoT apps, and all sorts of other things. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the time.